Okay, today we're going to be looking at All My Pretty Ones by Anne Sexton. We'll be reading the poem and going over some of the first impressions, which is the first step in our diddles analysis. All My Pretty Ones is the title of the collection that we're reading, so this obviously is a significant poem. We should be thinking about that as we read. I'll read the poem for you first. All My Pretty Ones by Anne Sexton. Father, this year's jinx rides us apart where you followed our mother to her cold slumber. A second shock boiling its stone to your heart, leaving me here to shuffle and disencumber you from the residence you could not afford. A gold key, your half of a woolen mill, 20 suits from Dunn's, an English Ford, the love and legal verbiage of another will. Boxes of pictures of people I do not know. I touch their cardboard faces. They must go. But the eyes as thick as wood in this album hold me. I stop here where a small boy waits in a ruffled dress for someone to come. For this soldier who holds his bugle like a toy, or for this velvet lady who cannot smile. Is this your father's father? This commodore in a mailman's suit? My father, time meanwhile has made it unimportant who you are looking for. I'll never know what these faces are all about. I lock them into their book and throw them out. This is the yellow scrapbook that you began the year I was born, as crackling now and wrinkly as tobacco leaves. Clippings where Hoover outran the Democrats, wiggling his dry finger at me in prohibition. News where the Hindenburg went down, and recent years where you went flush on war. This year, solvent but sick, you meant to marry that pretty widow in a 1-month rush, but before you had that second chance, I cried on your fat shoulder. 3 days later, you died. These are the snapshots of marriage stopped in places, side by side at the rail toward Nassau, now, here with the winner's cup at the speedboat races, here in tails at the cotillion you take a bow, here by our kennel of dogs with their pink eyes running like show-bred pigs in their chain-link pen, and here, standing like a duke among groups of men. Now I fold you down, my drunkard, my navigator, my first lost keeper to love or look at later. I hold a 5-year diary that my mother kept for 3 years, telling all she does not say of your alcoholic tendency. You overslept, she writes. My God, Father, each Christmas day with your blood will I drink down your glass of wine. The diary of your hurly-burly years goes to my shelf to wait for my age to pass. Only in this hoarded span will love persevere. Whether you are pretty or not, I outlive you. Bend down my strange face to yours and forgive you. All right, let's talk about some of the things that stand out right away. First, we notice that the diction of the jinx rides us apart. This is informal, and yet what it does indicate is that our speaker has an external conflict with her father. And the jinx is referring to both the fact that her mother and father have died so close to one another. Moving on, we notice right away that she refers to the fact that her mother died, and she uses the term cold slumber. And this is a euphemism for death, again indicating that perhaps by not using the term death itself that, Sexton is still struggling with the concept that her parents have died. Something else that I notice right away is the visual imagery used to describe her father, all the things that are in his home, the gold key, half of the woolen mill, the suits, the English Ford. This visual imagery characterizes her father as wealthy, and the allusion to Dunn's is also, it's an expensive male clothing store. Yet this wealth was contradicted because the line prior, if you look at the caesura after the line residence you could not afford, the caesura emphasizes the irony of the following lines. We pause after she says, Dad, you couldn't afford this home, and yet then we hear a description of all of these expensive items. So it's the contradiction of her father. He's characterized as living a facade, or living, a facade in his later years. The first stanza also has the use of the terms love and legal verbiage of another will. Here we see some alliteration and the use of antithesis. Again, if you forgot antithesis, make sure to refer to your poetry terms list. This is when a author or a poet will use two ideas that contrast one another very close together. The stanza ends with "they must go," which is simple syntax, and we're going to pull this out because it's stated so concisely. All of these images, all of these pictures that she's looking at, all of the items Dad has, they're going to be removed. And when we remove all our memories, this is our speaker attempting to remove her hate and her grief as well. Moving to the second stanza, we see the use of similes quite often, as thick as wood in this album, a soldier who holds his bugle like a toy. I think these similes typically are emphasizing, again, her disgust and her pain. The use of soldier who holds his bugle like a toy, again, is pulling on this irony that a soldier, the connotation and the denotation of the word, is a responsible adult, one who would be ready to defend a nation. And yet he's, holding the bugle like a plaything and being then characterized as childlike. So once again, we see a conflict occurring, and these conflicts emphasize our speaker's conflict with her father and her internal conflict with her grief and anger. The third stanza, I think something that stood out is the yellow scrapbook. Yellow typically is symbolic of age, and it connotates something tarnished and old. And so therefore we see that it's being to describe the scrapbook the father keeps. Diction that doesn't indicate a positive or loving tone, one of almost disgust. She makes the comparison by using a simile. She compares it to the pages being almost like tobacco leaves, crackling and wrinkling. This simile, combined with the visual and auditory imagery, creates a disdainful tone towards the scrapbook, which instead of holding memories of her father's love for his family, holds memories of historical events. And the rest of this paragraph relies heavily on a lot of allusions, with prohibition, Hindenburg, Hoover. Prohibition should come out and be something interesting, considering later on we hear a lot of references to alcoholism. This stanza ends with the simple syntax of 3 days later you died. Again, this is a biblical allusion to Christ, and what we can rely on with Sexton is that she is struggling with her faith, and therefore what we might be seeing is that there's a comparison being made between her father and God. Both show that she's struggling with relationships with both of these men. The fourth stanza is looking at snapshots of her parents' marriage, and we see quite a bit of allusions to the wealth and grandeur of her father's lifestyle. The use of a cotillion, wearing tails at the cotillion, is referring to, he's taking a tuxedo, that he was in part of speedboat races. All of this visual allusions are helping to contribute to the decadent lifestyle that the mother and father lived. But notice these images don't necessarily show love. And they lack the diction that's associated with a loving relationship, specifically one that would be of marriage. I think it's also interesting to note here the use in the final line of the parallel structure, where we see our speaker referring to her father as her drunkard, like my drunkard, my navigator, my first lost keeper. This parallel structure shows the conflicting terms and ways in which our speaker viewed her father. It shows her internal conflict. If he's her navigator, this is the person who's supposed to show her the course of life, yet she also refers to him as her drunkard. And so how can you rely on him to teach you and point you in the right directions? The last stanza, I think we once again see an allusion to to the Bible with the line, "My God, Father, each Christmas day with your blood will I drink down your glass of wine." This biblical allusion continues the comparison between her father and God. The final line should stand out to you because the final line is once again looking at the idea that we see a shift occur with tone. And our speaker states that she forgives her father. And so we see the poem come full circle and our speaker find closure. And this will help you with discussing theme. All right, that's our first read-through and initial impressions of All My Pretty Ones. Please now view the video which shows you how to complete the diddles form for this poem. And I want to remind you that you can view The Truth the Dead Know as well. Those two examples should help you complete the diddles chart for Curse Against Elegies, which is your homework over the break.